Welcome back. I have here today a few manuscripts I wanted to show you about the Kabbalah. The reason I'm covering Kabbalah is partially because this is the month of Av, and Av is the month of the yard site of Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. He passed away in the year 1573, and because of that, I wanted to take you through my collection, through some manuscript items of the Kabbalah. I touched on the Kabbalah earlier in a different video about the printing press in Frankfurt. The first book to be printed in Frankfurt is a Kabbalistic book. But this is different because these are manuscript items. Now, I haven't shown manuscripts in the videos before, and the main difference between a manuscript and a printed book is that a manuscript is written, and the meaning of that to us today, the collectors, is that the manuscript material is unique. Trends in the manuscript world, a certain amount of Bibles, a certain amount of Gemara, can be similar, but each manuscript item is unique, and that means it's not duplicated elsewhere. While on the other hand, printed items are duplicated in another form somewhere. That doesn't discount printed items, but manuscript items are usually prioritized because they are unique in all respects. And with that we begin. The first thing I wanted to show you is something that I got not too long ago, and not only is it considered a unique item to us today, but it was to a collector who lived more than 200 years ago, probably about 250 years ago. It's a manuscript lot of two items, and the later item is from a printed book, but it's a cutout flyleaf. It comes from the time before the Industrial Revolution, when nothing can be wasted. So the collector, who doesn't give us his name, reused a flyleaf from the end of a book to write about this little piece of paper that came to him and was in his collection. This collector writes the following thing on this extra piece of paper that he had. Kesav Yad, manuscript, of sayings of the Zohar, taken from the words of the Ari. Atik Yomen, it has a double meaning. Atik, it means antique, it means old. But in the Kabbalah, Atik also means of a designated and more perfect time, which it has a whole more Kabbalistic meaning, and it's esoteric. So it's a play on words. And he says Kishalosh Meos Shana, so it says it was about 300 years old at his time. And this small piece of paper is only a small remnant of a very weak piece of manuscript material. As he says, he's correct. It is extrapolations on the Zohar that is somehow sourced to Ari. How it is, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because it's cut down the length. When a text is cut, and often manuscripts are cut, they are usually easier to read when they're cut down the width. But since this is cut down the length, so we're not missing the end of the text, we're missing every single line of the text, aside from a few words on each line. What I can tell you is that the script and the writing style is Eastern in the sense of Turkish, or possibly Israeli, from the late 16th century, the late 1500s. That was the time that the Ari lived. Now we know through tradition that Ari didn't write things down, and we have written things through his students, which, if this was a student of Ari, is very likely. Somebody who probably heard from him, or saw him, or heard from others who heard from him. But we can't know who it is unless somebody knows that script of his students so well that they could match my fragment here with the other fragments of known script of his students. But I repeat that the manuscript material that I have here is, as is correct of this earlier collector writing, is taken from the time of the Ari, and it was about 300 years old at the time of his writing, probably a little bit less than 300 years. Another interesting thing that I found about this is that the earlier collector finds this to be holy and much older even at his time. There are things from the time of this collector that we collect today that I will show you soon that are already collected. However, this was already a collector's item, so to speak, in the early 1800s. This also gives provenance to the item that it was in Poland at around the year 1800 when this inscription was written. Turn now to the next item that I want to show you, and this is a complete text that survives in manuscript. And what it is very interesting. In the study of Torah, the holy words, there is a bracha, a blessing that one says before, and this bracha is thousands of years old. It was enacted by Chazal, so it was in the time of the temple or slightly after. However, there have been attempts to create a special one for the study of the Zohar and the study of Kabbalah, which is called Sod also, which is like the foundational secrets. The foundational secrets, which include the gematria, the numerical values of things and how they relate. It also includes connections and different things that can be called secrets. So it is also a secret, which connect to the Kabbalah specifically. And we know that there have been made certain rules before one could study Kabbalah. These came about in the earlier centuries before the intellectual study of the Kabbalah began. This was when Kabbalah was a holy subject that was limited to the exclusive few and to the experts. And this is one such text. And what this is a special prayer, the first in two parts. The first one is in Hebrew and the second one is in Aramaic. The Aramaic one is essentially a repetition of the Hebrew. And the Aramaic prayer explains what the prayer is about. It is really that he's asking that as he studies the Kabbalah, he should be granted all of the possible understandings and meanings of the hidden word, not just the explicit words, which are in the other segments of the Torah. This is for the Kabbalah, and this prayer was never disseminated and never moved past the author. It was discovered between the pages of a book. I don't know what book it was, but that's how it came to us, and it's complete. The script is again Eastern. However, it could be the Turkish script, but it could also be the Israeli-Palestinian script. That was another great center of the study of the Kabbalah, and this comes from the early 18th century. During this time, another such prayer was attempted to be written by Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar, the author of the Orach Chaim, and this might even precede that. This may even be earlier than his. However, I believe that it's from that area, either the centers of the study of Kabbalah, Tiberias, Tzfat, and so on. That is the second manuscript item I wanted to show you. The third manuscript item, which I want to show you, is slightly different, but it is also based in the Kabbalah, and it begins with one of the earliest writers of the Kabbalah, which he comes from the 14th century, the early 14th century, Rabbi Yosef Shikatilia, who wrote a number of famous books. However, there is some passages of his books which made it through to us only in manuscript, And as certain other manuscripts of the Kabbalah, they were printed in early printed books, um, and printed as part of another book. And this is such an example. So what this is the secrets for certain mitzvos by Rabbi Yosef, and this is one of them is the Shabbos, one of them is the Tefillin, one of them is the Tzitzis, and so on. And he explains the numerical value and the different names for them and the different laws. And what I found interesting about this manuscript is that the scribe who's copying this material over, he says where he got it from. He says recently they printed a book called Noam Elimelech, and in the back of that Noam Elimelech, this material was printed. Now Noam Elimelech is the famous Hasidic book by Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. However, that wasn't the first edition that they printed this material in the back. It was a certain edition. It was 1804. It was printed in a village in Ukraine called Polona, and this was this compilation of foundational text by Rabbi Yosef Chikatilo was printed in the back. And so he says that this book was really recently printed. That gives us the year of this manuscript. It's 1804. And this author, this scribe, prefers not to have the book, or he maybe already has the book and he got a hold of the book and he copied only this end item, this end printed item. So I found that to be very interesting because he mentions a book that had just been printed, and today that's one of the oldest printed items among the Hasidus, and it's also a very early edition of this very famous work. And it's not very well known that this early text of the Kabbalah, which came from the 14th century, was printed in the back of a Hasidic book. But we have evidence here of this text being able to spread through another printed item, which I found to be very interesting. So again, I just wanted to share some manuscript items, something a little bit different, Kabbalistic items, and I welcome your comments.